Africa is in the midst of an energy crisis like several parts of the world that adds to the long list of challenges that are faced by several communities from Cape to Cairo, so to speak. Countries are hit by electricity outages that have halted economic growth and pose a threat to livelihoods. So videos shared on social media, though, show something that may apparently help alleviate the pressure. This is some kind of rock, we're told, that's electrically charged. But some scientists have spoken out against this, saying the reports are false, if not just misleading. Let's get you a sense of what we know scientifically speaking. Bring in chemical engineer and independent analyst Kudzai Mutisi live to us via our video link. Kudzai, it's great to see you. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. For many people, they'd hoped that perhaps this is the possible answer found somewhere in Africa. Many scientists, though, saying not so. So if it's not an electrically charged rock, what is it?
Thank you, Ayanda, and thank you to the viewers. This is quite exciting, obviously, for the obvious reason that we are in an energy crisis with rolling blackouts all over Africa. Then we have every reason to be excited about this new development, as it were. Many people are saying it is vibranium, but vibranium is as fictional as Wakanda itself. However, as far as we can tell from the videos, the rocks are exhibiting everything that can be attributed or can be likened to what vibranium in the fictional sense of it can do. But it is not surprising, though, to find an electrically charged material or a rock, whatever it is, because it is possible to charge materials. One is the thing that we know is that if you take something like this plastic ruler and you rub it in your head, it can become charged, or you rub it on your jersey or any other material, it can get charged and become a charged material. So it is not shocking that we find materials that are charged, because it is possible to charge materials. There are three ways that you can charge a material. The first way is by electrostatic induction, where you can just bring a charged material close to another material, and then that other material gets charged. Or it can be by friction, where you rub two materials together and the materials get charged. Or it can be by contact, where you take a charged material and put it in contact with another material, and then that other material which was not charged becomes charged. But there's another special way again that, in which materials can be charged. And this can be an explanation to this video, if it is a real video. It is called the piezoelectric effect. The piezoelectric effect occurs when you take a material, you subject it to a stress. Maybe you use a hammer or any other kind of force to the material, and that material can be polarized or can have a voltage across it, what we call the piezoelectric effect. And in the natural sense, one of the materials that does this piezoelectric effect is quartz. And quartz is very abundant on Earth because it is made of silicon and oxygen, which are the two most abundant elements in the Earth's crust. So rocks, sand, and everything contains quartz. And there can be maybe a mechanism that occurred, maybe geological movements that occurred in the rocks, placing some stress on those rocks, and then the piezoelectric effect takes effect, and then the rocks become polarized. This can be the explanation to the charging part. It's not surprising. It's possible to have materials that are charged. But what makes it wary or suspicious is the fact that these rocks are not only charged, they are able to store the charge, which is quite a difficult thing.
Yeah,
because that's our conundrum, as it were, at this stage. Because we have energy, we can take solar energy, we have everything, but we are struggling to store it, to store the charge, to store the energy. And these rocks are apparently doing that, which is the fascinating part of it.
So much so, Kudzai, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you next. They're able to store so much energy that they're able to essentially light up a small bulb, as we saw in one of those videos there, and have quite the charge when some of them are put next to each other. But what we also know from physics and science is that rocks, sand as it were, those kind of crystal lattices don't do very well in storing large amounts of energy. So how do we explain what our eyes are able to see here?
Yeah, that is the conundrum that needs explanation. But when I was watching the video, there is a question that is questionable in one aspect. For you to light the bulb, you need two poles. There should be a negative pole and a positive pole. We know this when we're connecting a battery or appliances to a battery or anything. There should be something with less potential and something with high potential. By the way, electricity is the flow of charge. And for you to have a flow, just like the way rivers flow, they flow from a higher level to a lower level. Same with electricity. It has to flow from a higher potential to a lower potential. So there should be a negative pole and a positive pole. But these guys are just taking these codes and just putting it randomly on the rock. And it's quite amazing. How are they finding the negative pole and the positive pole on that one? That makes the whole video questionable in that aspect. And then in terms of storing the charge, that's quite a difficult thing. That's a difficult technology, by the way. So it means if they are able to store the charge, the rocks contain some kind of materials with this kind of aspect, and the materials have been placed in such a way that they form sort of like a battery, which is naturally quite an improbability. It's quite impossible to do that. However, we don't know, because we don't know what those rocks contain. They may contain anything, by the way. We have to do a chemical analysis of the rocks and determine what they contain, if those rocks actually exist.
Incredibly fascinating indeed. And I guess what you're also touching on there is what's possibly at the heart of the energy crisis, right? There actually is an abundance of energy in the world. I mean, the sun is constantly up. The wind in many instances is always blowing. But the challenge for humanity is, how do we capture and store that energy? What we know so far is that rocks aren't really great candidates for that, at least if past, scientific experiments are to go by.
Definitely. The storage part is actually what is the challenge that we are facing on how we can store all this abundant energy that is in the universe. We don't have a shortage of energy in the universe. We have it in abundance. In fact, all the energy that we have now was there at the beginning of the universe. There is no new energy coming. We can just transform it from one form into another. But then there are useful forms of the energy that we need, and sometimes we have to store it when those forms are not available. Just like we can have the sun all day during the day, but at night when we don't have the sun, we have no other source. We have to store it when we have sunlight during the day, and we are struggling to do that. We have technologies, but they have their own limitations. And when it is rocks that are doing this, then it becomes as fictional as Wakanda, as we say. This vibranium thing becomes a reality. And another thing with charging is, as it were, you can charge any material, as I said before, but it will discharge. As long as you charge the material, it is going to discharge. What those guys were doing, hitting the rocks together, obviously they were discharging somehow. There is some kind of discharge, and they will not be like that forever. That's true. But looking at the way they were doing it, it seems like the charge is remaining there and it's lasting or forever. It's whatever. That's quite questionable in every aspect of it.
Yeah.
The law of conservation of energy is an established law, and we cannot break it. No one has broken it in history, and that's why it's called a law, because scientifically speaking, it has been proved over and over again.
Sure. And that law, of course, says energy can't be created, it can only be transferred from one form to another. It's all very fascinating, and I can't blame people for hoping that vibranium does exist among us, especially because so many of us are desperate for solutions. But Kudzai, thanks for helping us in on what we know scientifically, at least, as I imagine the investigations around what those rocks actually are continue. Kudzai Matisi is a chemical engineer and an independent analyst. Once again, thanks very much.